Do you, Marcus Chin, take Elena Rodriguez to be your lawfully wedded wife? The words echoed through the cathedral as I stood frozen in my grandmother's vintage lace, hands trembling around white roses that suddenly felt like chains. Marcus squeezed my fingers, his smile perfect for the cameras, but I caught the flicker of something desperate in his eyes. I do. The priest turned to me, his voice warm with decades of matrimonial blessings. And do you, Elena Rodriguez? The cathedral doors exploded open. Heavy boots thundered down the marble aisle as armed men in black suits flooded the sanctuary. Gasps erupted from the pews. Someone screamed. The wedding photographer dropped his camera with a crash that split the sudden silence. At the head of this invasion walked a man who commanded the space like he owned it. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair slicked back and eyes the color of midnight storms. His tailored suit probably cost more than most people's cars, but it was the gun holstered beneath his jacket that made my blood freeze. Alessandro Russo, Marcus whispered beside me, and I felt him go rigid. The man, Alessandro, stopped 3 feet from the altar, his gaze fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying a slight Italian accent that made each word sound like silk wrapped around steel. "Ladies, I apologize for the interruption, but I'm afraid this wedding cannot proceed." "You can't," the priest stammered. "Father, with respect, step aside." Alessandro's men fanned out through the cathedral, their presence turning the sacred space into something that felt like a trap. "This is business, not personal." My heart hammered against my ribs as I found my voice. "What do you want?" Those dark eyes shifted to me, and for a moment, something flickered across his face. Recognition? But that was impossible. I'd never seen this man before in my life. "You're coming with me, princess." His voice was calm, conversational, as if he were inviting me for coffee instead of destroying my wedding day. "Your husband-to-be has debts to pay." "That's impossible," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I was turning to Marcus, searching his face for the denial I needed to hear. Marcus had gone pale, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cathedral's chill. "Elena, I can explain." $8 million, Alessandro continued, pulling a folded document from his jacket. "Plus interest. Compounded daily for the past 6 months. The number hit me like a physical blow. 8 million? We lived in a modest apartment. Marcus drove a Honda. He worked in marketing for a mid-level firm. "You're lying," I breathed. "Marcus Chun, account number 47391, B, opened 18 months ago with Torino Financial Services." Alessandro's smile was razor-sharp. "Would you like me to continue? The cocaine shipments? The money laundering through your marketing company's overseas accounts?" The wedding bouquet slipped from my numb fingers, white roses scattering across marble like fallen snow. "Marcus." My fiancé couldn't meet my eyes. "Baby, listen, it wasn't supposed to happen like this. I was going to pay it back, I swear." "With what money?" The words came out as a shriek that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. "We can barely afford rent. The inheritance," Marcus said desperately. "Your grandmother's estate. Once we were married, I could use it as collateral." The cathedral spun around me. My grandmother's money. The only thing left of my family after years of running from my father's fists, my mother's addiction, the endless cycle of abuse that had finally driven me to change my name and disappear into Marcus's ordinary, safe life. He'd known about the inheritance. He'd known, and he'd planned this. "She's mine now," Alessandro said, and his voice cut through my shock like a blade. "Collateral for the debt. Consider it a business transaction." "You can't just take someone," I snapped, surprising myself with the steadiness of my own voice. "This isn't the 18th century." Alessandro reached into his jacket again and produced a leather portfolio. "Marriage contract. Already filed with the state of New York as of this morning. Congratulations, Mrs. Russo. You're about to become very wealthy and very protected. I didn't sign anything. Your signature from the marriage license application was quite useful." He handed the papers to one of his men. Amazing what modern technology can accomplish. The betrayal crashed over me in waves. Marcus, who'd promised me safety. The inheritance that was supposed to be my escape from the poverty I'd grown up in. The new identity I'd built so carefully, brick by brick, to distance myself from the girl who'd hidden in closets while her parents screamed. All of it gone.
This is kidnapping, I said.
This is business, Alessandro corrected. Your former fiancé gambled with money that wasn't his. Now he pays the price. I pay the price, you mean? You benefit from the arrangement. A home, security, protection from the kind of people your boyfriend borrowed from before he came to me. His eyes hardened. People who wouldn't have offered marriage contracts. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna, where stories like this reveal the secrets families try to bury. I should have turned around right then, but I didn't. And before I tell you why that decision changed everything, subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna, because some secrets are too dangerous to keep buried. Marcus grabbed my arm. Elena, don't let him do this. We can figure something out. One of Alessandro's men stepped forward, and Marcus released me like I was on fire. The choice is simple, Alessandro said, extending his hand toward me. Come willingly, or my men will carry you. Either way, you leave with me today. I looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. A liar who'd used my trauma, my desperate need for safety, to trap me in another nightmare. That was the moment my life stopped being mine, I whispered. Then I stepped off the altar and walked toward the man who'd just bought me like property. Welcome to your new home, Mrs. Russo. The penthouse elevator opened directly into Alessandro's domain, 30 floors above Manhattan, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing a city that suddenly felt like it existed in another universe. Marble floors stretched beneath crystal chandeliers, and every surface gleamed with the kind of wealth I'd only seen in magazines. This isn't my home, I said, stepping out on unsteady legs. This is a prison with better decor. Alessandro's men filed out behind us, their presence transforming the elegant space into something that felt like a gilded cage. He dismissed them with a subtle gesture, leaving us alone in the vast living area. Your room is down that hallway, he said, pointing toward a corridor lined with original oil paintings. Bathroom, walk-in closet. I've taken the liberty of having appropriate clothing delivered. Appropriate for what? Being your captive? Appropriate for being my wife. His voice carried no emotion, like he was discussing the weather. There will be social functions, business dinners. You'll need to look the part. I laughed, a sharp sound that echoed off the marble. You think I'm going to play dress-up for your criminal friends? I think you'll do what's necessary to survive. Alessandro moved to the bar cart, pouring amber liquid into 2 crystal glasses. Whiskey? I don't drink. You might want to start. The casual cruelty of that statement hit me like a slap. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly aware that I was still wearing my wedding dress, the one I'd saved for months to buy, the one that was supposed to represent my fresh start. I want to call someone, I said. Who? Alessandro set down his glass, genuinely curious. Your parents? From what I understand, you haven't spoken to them in 3 years. My chest tightened. How do you? Elena Rodriguez, formerly Elena Martinez. Father currently serving his 2nd stint in county lockup for domestic violence. Mother died of an overdose 14 months ago. He recited the facts like reading from a file. You changed your name at 18, worked 3 jobs to put yourself through community college, and disappeared into Marcus Chen's ordinary little life thinking you'd found safety. Each word was a knife twist. Stop. You have no friends because you're too afraid to let anyone close enough to discover your secrets. No job anymore. I had Marcus fire you from the marketing firm this morning. No money of your own, just your grandmother's inheritance that Marcus was so eager to get his hands on. I said stop. The words exploded out of me with such force that Alessandro actually paused, his dark eyes studying my face with something that might have been interest. There she is, he murmured. What? The fighter. I was wondering when she'd show up. I wanted to scream at him, to throw something, to run. Instead, I forced my voice steady. What do you want from me? Compliance. At least publicly. Alessandro moved to the windows, gazing out at the city spread below us. There are people who would love to use you against me. Your safety depends on them believing this marriage is real. And privately? Stay out of my way. Don't try to leave. Don't contact anyone from your old life. You mean my actual life? Your old life ended the moment Marcus signed that loan agreement. Alessandro's reflection in the window looked like a stranger, cold, untouchable. This is your reality now. I walked to the opposite window, putting the length of the room between us. Below, traffic moved like blood cells through arteries, people living normal lives while I stood trapped 40 stories above them. There has to be something you want, I said. Some way to pay this off. $8 million plus interest is currently $12 million. Do you have $12 million, Elena? The number made my head spin.
No.
Then we have nothing to discuss. I could work. Get a job. Doing what? You have a 2-year degree in general studies and 3 years of experience answering phones. His tone wasn't cruel, just factual, which somehow made it worse. At minimum wage, you'd need approximately 400 years to pay off the debt. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass. So this is it. I'm stuck here forever. You're protected here forever. There's a difference. Protected from what? Alessandro turned from the window, and for the first time since the cathedral, his expression shifted into something darker. The Russians who Marcus borrowed from before he came to me. The Colombians who are very upset about a shipment that went missing. The FBI agents who are building a case against the marketing firm and everyone associated with it. My legs felt weak.
FBI.
Your fiancé was quite busy. Money laundering, drug trafficking, embezzlement. You lived with him for 2 years. They'll assume you knew something. I didn't know anything. I believe you. They won't. Alessandro's smile was sharp enough to cut. But they can't touch Alessandro Russo's wife without evidence. And there is no evidence because you are innocent. The twisted logic of it made my head ache. He'd trapped me to protect me from the consequences of being trapped by someone else. I never asked for your protection. Protection isn't something you ask for. It's something you need. A soft chime echoed through the penthouse, and Alessandro checked his phone. Dinner will be served in an hour. I suggest you change. I'm not hungry. You'll eat anyway. Appearances matter. He started toward what I assumed was his office, then paused. Elena, don't test the security system. It's designed to keep threats out, but it also keeps you in. The elevator requires my fingerprint. The stairs are alarmed. Even the windows. What about the roof? 40-story drop. I wouldn't recommend it. After he disappeared into the corridor, I sank onto the nearest couch, white leather that probably cost more than my entire previous wardrobe. The wedding dress pooled around me like spilled cream, and I caught sight of myself in the mirror across the room. I looked like a ghost. 20 minutes later, I found the bedroom Alessandro had mentioned. It was larger than my old apartment, with a king-sized bed draped in silk and a view that stretched to the Hudson River. The promised clothing filled a walk-in closet the size of a small house. Designer dresses, shoes, jewelry. Everything in exactly my size. The tags were still attached to most items. He'd planned this down to the last detail. I selected the simplest dress I could find, black, conservative, expensive enough to fund a small country, and stared at myself in the bathroom mirror. The girl looking back at me was a stranger in borrowed clothes, playing a part in someone else's story. At exactly 7 o'clock, I emerged to find the dining room transformed. Candles flickered on a table set for 2, and Alessandro had changed into a charcoal suit that made his dark eyes even more intense. Much better, he said, pulling out my chair. Don't what? Don't pretend this is a date. Don't pretend you're being polite. Don't pretend any of this is normal. Alessandro's hand stilled on the chair back. What would you prefer? That I throw you in a basement and feed you bread and water? I'd prefer you let me go. That's not an option. A man in a white coat appeared with the first course, something artfully arranged that probably had a French name I couldn't pronounce. The absurdity of it all hit me like a wave. This is insane, I said, staring at the plate. 2 hours ago, I was getting married. Now I'm having dinner with a man who thinks he owns me. I don't think I own you, Elena. Alessandro cut into his food with surgical precision. I know I do. Legally, financially, practically. The sooner you accept that reality, the easier this will be. For who? You? For both of us. I pushed the plate away. I'm not eating this. Yes, you are. The quiet certainty in his voice made something snap inside me. I grabbed the nearest object, a crystal water glass, and hurled it at the wall. It exploded in a shower of glittering fragments. Alessandro didn't even flinch. Feel better? He asked.
No.
Good. Anger will keep you alive. But control it, or it'll destroy you. He stood, walking to where I sat trembling in my borrowed dress and borrowed life. For a moment, I thought he might touch me, might offer some gesture of comfort. Instead, he leaned down until his mouth was next to my ear. You're mine now, he whispered, his breath warm against my skin. No one touches what's mine. No one hurts what's mine. And no one takes what's mine. Remember that. Then he straightened and walked away, leaving me alone with the shattered glass and the terrible realization that I might never escape this beautiful prison. You're not eating again. Alessandro's voice cut through the morning silence as I stared at the untouched breakfast spread before me. 3 days had passed since the wedding that never was, and I'd barely managed more than a few bites of anything. I'm not hungry. You will be when you collapse. He set down his coffee cup with deliberate precision. Starving yourself won't change your situation. I finally looked up at him, noting the dark circles under his eyes that matched my own. Maybe not, but it's the only choice I've left. Something flickered across his face, too quick to interpret.
Get dressed.
We're going out. I thought I wasn't allowed to leave. You're not. But there's a difference between leaving and being escorted. Alessandro stood, straightening his cufflinks. Business dinner tonight. You need to be seen as my wife, not my prisoner. The irony wasn't lost on me. What's the difference? Prisoners don't wear Cartier. An hour later, I found myself in the back of a bulletproof Mercedes, flanked by Alessandro and one of his men, a quiet giant named Sergio who'd been shadowing my every move since day one. The city passed by in a blur of glass and steel. Where are we going? I asked. Shopping. Then lunch. Then you'll return home while I handle some business. Alessandro's tone was matter-of-fact, like he was reading a schedule. You mean while you handle crime? His jaw tightened. I run legitimate businesses. Construction, real estate, import-export. That import cocaine? The car went silent except for the hum of traffic outside. Sergio shifted uncomfortably in the front seat. Be very careful what you say in public, Elena. Alessandro's voice carried a warning that made my skin crawl. Accusations like that have consequences. For who? You or me? For everyone. The boutique on 5th Avenue screamed money, the kind of place where they serve champagne while you tried on dresses that cost more than most people's cars. The staff treated Alessandro like royalty and me like his prized possession, which I supposed I was. This would look stunning on you, Mrs. Russo, the saleswoman gushed, holding up a midnight blue gown that probably required its own insurance policy. I don't need. She'll take it, Alessandro interrupted. And the black one. The red cocktail dress. The Chanel suit. I watched him spend more money in 10 minutes than I'd earned in a year, each purchase another link in the chain that bound me to him. The saleswoman practically purred as she rang up items I'd never asked for and would never want. This is unnecessary, I said when we were finally alone in the dressing room area. You represent me now. You need to look the part. I represent myself. Alessandro stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something expensive and dark that probably had a name like possession or conquest. That's where you're wrong. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. When you're on my arm tonight, you represent power. Stability. The kind of woman a man like me chooses to marry. A man like you doesn't marry. He acquires. Smart girl. The casual admission shouldn't have surprised me, but it still felt like a slap. At least he was honest about his motivations, which was more than I could say for Marcus. Lunch was at an upscale Italian restaurant where the maitre d' greeted Alessandro by name and led us to a private table in the back. I picked at a salad while Alessandro handled what seemed like a never-ending stream of phone calls in rapid Italian. "Do you speak any other languages besides English?" he asked during a rare break in his conversations. "Some Spanish." "Why?" "Might be useful. I have interests in several countries." "You mean criminal enterprises?" Alessandro's phone buzzed again, and he glanced at the screen. His expression darkened. "What is it?" I asked. "Nothing that concerns you." But something in his tone suggested otherwise. He answered the call, this time speaking in low, clipped sentences that sounded nothing like his usual measured delivery. "We need to leave," he said after hanging up.
Now. Now.
The ride back to the penthouse was tense, Alessandro making call after call, while Sergio took increasingly complex routes through the city. I wasn't naive. I knew we were being followed or avoiding being followed, or both. "Is everything all right?" I ventured. "Everything's fine." The lie was so obvious it was almost insulting. But before I could press him further, we were pulling into the underground garage of his building. The elevator ride up was silent, but I could feel the tension radiating off Alessandro like heat from a furnace. Whatever had happened during lunch had shifted something fundamental. "I need to go out again," he said once we were back in the penthouse. "Cancel tonight's dinner." "What's wrong?" "Nothing you need to worry about." But even as he said it, I saw him signal to Sergio, who immediately moved to the windows, checking the street below with the practiced eye of someone expecting trouble. "Alessandro." He turned at the sound of his name, and for just a moment, his carefully maintained facade cracked. I saw exhaustion there and something else, fear. "There are people who don't want this marriage to succeed," he said finally. "What people?" "Competitors. Rivals. People who see a weakness they can exploit." The pieces clicked into place. "They're going to use me against you. They're going to try." For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something other than anger toward Alessandro. Not sympathy exactly, but understanding. We were both trapped, me by circumstance, him by the choices that had brought him to power. What happens if they succeed? Alessandro was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "I lost my family once before. I won't lose another." The admission hung between us like a confession. I wanted to ask what he meant, wanted to understand the pain I heard beneath his words, but before I could speak, his phone rang again. This time, the conversation was brief and final. When he hung up, Alessandro looked like a man preparing for war. "Vincent's on his way up," he said to Sergio. "Standard security sweep." But there was something in his tone that suggested this wasn't standard at all. Sergio nodded and disappeared toward the elevator. "Who's Vincent?" I asked. "My lieutenant. My oldest friend. The only person in this world I trust completely." The elevator chimed, and a man emerged who looked like Alessandro's opposite, shorter, stockier, with graying hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He looked more like a college professor than a criminal. "Vincent Torres," Alessandro said. "Vincent, my wife Elena." Vincent's smile seemed genuine as he shook my hand. "I've heard a great deal about you, Mrs. Russo. Welcome to the family." The word family sent a chill through me, but Vincent's manner was so different from Alessandro's usual intensity that I found myself almost liking him. "I need to brief you on the Kozlov situation," Vincent said to Alessandro, and I caught the edge of concern in his voice. "Later." Elena was just going to rest before tonight. But I was already moving toward my room, partly because I could take a hint, and partly because I suddenly felt like an intruder in whatever was happening between these two men. From my bedroom, I could hear the low murmur of their conversation, punctuated by Alessandro's increasingly sharp responses. Something was very wrong, and despite everything, I found myself worried about what would happen to him. The thought disturbed me more than I wanted to admit. If you're feeling that same shock I felt, subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna. Because what happened next changed everything we thought we knew about family, love, and the choices we make to protect the people we love most. If you're watching this thinking, I would have done the same thing. Subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna. Because the choice she's about to make will change 3 lives forever. I made the worst decision of my life that day. But before I explain how it destroyed everything I'd built, subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna. Because you need to understand what desperation can make a mother do. An hour later, I heard Vincent leave, but Alessandro didn't come to find me. Instead, I heard him making more calls, his voice growing more strained with each conversation. When I finally emerged for dinner, I found him standing at the windows again, still fully dressed, but somehow looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. "The Russians?" I asked quietly. He didn't turn around. "Among others." "What do they want?" "What they've always wanted. Territory.
Power.
Me dead." The casual way he said it made my breath catch. "And me." Finally, he looked at me. "They want to hurt me through you. Then let me go. If I'm not here, they can't. They'll find you anyway. And when they do, they won't be as civilized as I've been." The word civilized almost made me laugh. Kidnapping and forced marriage hardly qualified as civilized in my book. But looking at Alessandro's face, I realized he genuinely believed he was protecting me. "I never asked you to protect me," I said. "No," he agreed. "But I'm going to anyway." "Get down." Alessandro's shout shattered the morning quiet as bullets exploded through the penthouse windows. I hit the marble floor hard, crystal raining down around me as the floor-to-ceiling glass disintegrated under automatic gunfire. Alessandro was beside me instantly, his body covering mine as more shots peppered the walls where we'd been standing seconds before. The acrid smell of gunpowder filled the air. "Stay low," he commanded, pulling me behind the granite kitchen island. "Don't move until I tell you." His gun was already in his hand. When had he drawn it? My ears rang from the assault, but I could hear shouting from somewhere in the building, heavy footsteps in the stairwell. "Vincent." Alessandro spoke into his phone, his voice deadly calm despite the chaos. "We're compromised." "How many?" I couldn't hear the response, but Alessandro's face darkened. "That's impossible." "The building security," he stopped mid-sentence, and I saw the exact moment realization hit him. "Vincent." His voice changed, became something I'd never heard before. Vulnerable, betrayed. "Vincent, answer me." The line went dead. "What's happening?" I whispered. Alessandro stared at his phone like it had physically wounded him. 20 years, he said quietly. 20 years I've trusted him with my life. "Vincent." Vincent's the one who gave them the access codes. The security schedules. Everything. The betrayal hit me almost as hard as it hit him. Vincent, with his kind eyes and professorial manner, who'd welcomed me to the family. More gunshots erupted from the hallway, closer this time. Alessandro grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the back corridor. "There's a safe room," he said. "Reinforced steel, separate communication system. You'll be protected." "What about you?" "I'll handle this." "Alessandro." "This isn't a negotiation, Elena. Move." But before we could reach the corridor, the elevator chimed. The sound was obscene in the aftermath of violence, so normal, so everyday, like someone arriving for a dinner party. The doors opened to reveal Vincent Torres, flanked by 4 men I'd never seen before. Russians, if I had to guess. Pale, cold-eyed, carrying assault rifles like accessories. "Hello, Alessandro," Vincent said, his voice carrying the same gentle tone I remembered from our introduction. "Elena." "Why?" Alessandro's question came out raw, scraped from somewhere deep. Vincent stepped into the demolished penthouse, crunching over broken glass. "Because you've grown weak. This marriage, this obsession with protecting one woman, it's made you vulnerable. I trusted you with everything." "Yes, you did. And that was your first mistake." Vincent's smile was sad, almost paternal. "Your second was thinking love could coexist with power." One of the Russians said something in rapid Russian, and Vincent nodded. "They're quite eager to finish this," Vincent translated. "Apparently, you've caused them considerable inconvenience over the years." Alessandro's grip on his gun never wavered, but I could see the calculation in his eyes. For assault rifles against one handgun, Minimal cover. No backup coming. Let her go, he said. This is between us. No, I don't think so. Vincent's gaze shifted to me, and I saw something hungry there. She's quite valuable, you know. Marcus Chin wasn't lying about that inheritance. 15 million, once the estate settles. Plus, she has other uses. The way he said it made my skin crawl. What other uses? You're going to help us dismantle Alessandro's empire from the inside. All those legitimate businesses, all those carefully hidden accounts, you'll have access to everything as his widow. Widow. The word came out as a croak. Well, yes. Alessandro can't exactly run his organization from beyond the grave. That chill I felt in that moment. Have you ever felt that too? When your heart knows something before your mind catches up. Tell me in the comments if you've been there. Your story might help someone else see the signs. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold the phone. Have you ever felt that moment when everything you believed just shatters? Tell me in the comments, because right now, I need to know I'm not the only one who's been this afraid. Alessandro stepped forward, placing himself completely between me and the guns. She doesn't know anything about the business. She's useless to you. Perhaps. But she's not useless to you, is she? Vincent's smile widened. That's the beautiful irony of this situation. The great Alessandro Russo, brought down by the one thing he thought would make him stronger. You're wrong. Am I? Look at yourself. You're ready to die for a woman you've known for less than a week. Alessandro didn't deny it, and something inside my chest shifted, like a lock turning. Kill him, Vincent said in Russian, and I understood enough to know what was coming. The Russians raised their weapons, and time seemed to slow. Alessandro tensed, ready to make what would certainly be a futile last stand, and something inside me snapped. Wait. I stepped out from behind Alessandro, my hands raised. I'll do it. Whatever you want, I'll do it. Just don't kill him. Elena, no, Alessandro said sharply. Shut up. The words came out harder than I intended. You got me into this mess. Now I'm getting us out. But even as I said it, I was calculating distances, angles, possibilities. The Russians had relaxed slightly at my surrender, their weapons lowered, but not lowered enough. Sensible girl, Vincent said approvingly. Now step away from. I dove sideways, grabbing the heavy crystal vase from the side table and hurling it at the nearest Russian. It caught him in the face with a wet crunch, and his rifle discharged wildly into the ceiling. Alessandro moved like lightning, his gun barking twice. 2 of the Russians went down before they could react. The third got off a burst that shattered the marble behind us, and I felt chips of stone sting my face. Vincent was shouting orders, reaching for his own weapon, when Alessandro put a bullet in his shoulder. The older man spun and went down hard, his gun skittering across the floor. The remaining Russian was younger, faster. He'd found cover behind the overturned dining table and was methodically putting shots into everything around us. Alessandro returned fire, but his position was exposed. Stay down, he told me, but I was already moving, crawling along the wall toward where Vincent had fallen. Vincent's gun was just out of his reach, his face twisted with pain and fury. When he saw me approaching, his eyes widened. You little. I grabbed the gun and pointed it at him with hands that shook so badly, I wasn't sure I could hit him if I tried. Call them off. You won't shoot me. Try me. Behind us, the gunfight continued. Alessandro had better cover now, but the Russians seemed to have unlimited ammunition. Sooner or later, one of them would get lucky. Call them off, I repeated, pressing the gun against Vincent's uninjured shoulder. Even if I do, you think this ends here? There are others. Marcus is working with the Kozlov family now. They'll never stop coming for you. Marcus. The name hit me like ice water. What does Marcus have to do with this? Vincent's laugh turned into a cough that brought up blood. You really don't know, do you? This whole thing was his idea. The debt, the marriage, everything. He needed a way to get to your inheritance without suspicion. The gun wavered in my hands. That's impossible. Is it? Think about it, Elena. How did a marketing executive from Queens end up owing money to the most dangerous man in New York? How did Alessandro know exactly where to find you, exactly when to interrupt the wedding? The pieces fell into place like dominoes, each revelation more devastating than the last. Marcus hadn't gotten in over his head. He'd orchestrated everything. The debt, the wedding, probably even meeting me in the first place. He planned this from the beginning, I whispered. Smart boy. Smarter than Alessandro gave him credit for. Vincent tried to sit up, winced, and fell back. Though I doubt he expected you to actually start caring about your captor. A sudden silence from the main room made both of us freeze. The shooting had stopped. Alessandro. I called out. No answer. Vincent smiled through his pain. Looks like this conversation is over. I heard footsteps approaching, slow and deliberate. Either Alessandro had won, or the Russian was coming to finish what they'd started. Elena? Alessandro's voice, rough with exhaustion and pain, was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. I nearly sobbed with relief. I'm here. I managed. He appeared in the doorway, blood seeping through his shirt sleeve, his gun still in his hand. When he saw me holding Vincent's weapon, something flickered in his eyes. Are you hurt? He asked. I'm fine. You're bleeding. It's nothing. Alessandro moved to where Vincent lay, and I saw murder in his expression. 20 years. 20 years of watching you build an empire on the bones of better men, Vincent replied, unrepentant even now. 20 years of cleaning up your mistakes, covering your weaknesses. I trusted you with everything. And I gave you everything. My loyalty, my friendship, my life. And you threw it away for her. Vincent's eyes found mine. For a woman who'll never love you the way you love her. You're wrong, I said, and the words surprised me as much as they surprised both men. Alessandro turned to look at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before in those dark eyes. Hope. I was wrong about a lot of things, I continued, still pointing the gun at Vincent. About Marcus, about you, about myself. I took a shaky breath. But I know what love looks like now. It looks like someone taking a bullet to protect you. It looks like someone ready to die rather than let you be hurt. Elena, Alessandro said quietly. It looks like choosing to stay with someone even when you have every reason to run. I met his eyes, and something passed between us. Understanding, acceptance, choice. I choose you, Alessandro. I choose this life, this mess, this beautiful disaster. I choose you. The admission hung in the air like a bridge between who I'd been and who I was becoming. Alessandro took a step toward me, then another, until he was close enough to touch. Are you sure? He asked, and I heard years of loneliness in that simple question. I'm sure. That's when the elevator chimed again. We all turned toward the sound, Alessandro raising his weapon, me tightening my grip on Vincent's gun. The doors opened to reveal Marcus Chen, flanked by 3 more Russians, all of them armed and ready for war. Marcus looked exactly the same as he had at the altar, handsome, earnest, completely ordinary. It was jarring to see him here, in the aftermath of violence, looking like he'd just stepped out of a business meeting. Hello, Elena, he said pleasantly. Sorry about all this. I know it must be confusing. You bastard, I breathed.
Now.
Is that any way to greet your fiancé? Ex-fiancé, Alessandro corrected, his gun trained on Marcus's chest. Actually, that's where you're wrong. Marcus smiled, and it was the same smile that had convinced me he was safe, normal, different from the men who'd hurt me before. You see, Elena never actually married you. That forged signature? It won't hold up in court. Which means legally, she's still single. Still in possession of her inheritance. Still very much mine. Behind me, Vincent laughed weakly. Told you he was smart. The Russians with Marcus spread out, taking positions that gave them clear shots at both Alessandro and me. The math was simple. We were outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus continued conversationally. Elena's going to come with me. We're going to have a proper wedding, somewhere private. And then, unfortunately, she's going to have a tragic accident. Inheritance goes to the grieving husband, and everyone gets what they want. Except Elena, Alessandro said. Well, yes. Except Elena. The casual way he discussed my murder made something cold and hard settle in my chest. This was the man I'd thought would save me from my past. This was the man I'd trusted with my secrets, my body, my hope for a normal life. What about Alessandro? I asked. Marcus shrugged. The Russians will handle that. Apparently, he's been very bad for business. I looked at Alessandro, saw the resignation in his face. He was calculating odds, planning one last desperate play that would probably get us both killed. I have a better idea, I said. Both men looked at me. No, I said simply, and shot Vincent in the leg. His scream of pain and surprise was the signal Alessandro needed. He dove right as the Russians opened fire, bullets chewing up the wall where he'd been standing. I rolled left, keeping Vincent between me and Marcus's men. The penthouse erupted into chaos, gunfire, shouting, the sound of glass and marble being destroyed. Through it all, I heard Marcus screaming orders, his voice high and panicked. Alessandro had found cover behind the kitchen island, but he was bleeding more heavily now. One of the Russians was advancing on his position, while the others kept him pinned down. I had maybe 4 bullets left in Vincent's gun, no cover worth mentioning, and no idea what I was doing. But I had something else. I had a choice. I could run for the safe room Alessandro had mentioned. Hide until it was over. Let him die protecting me like some kind of medieval sacrifice. Or I could fight. I chose to fight. Rising from behind Vincent's moaning form, I put a bullet into the Russian advancing on Alessandro. The man went down hard, giving Alessandro the opening he needed to eliminate the other shooter. That left Marcus and one remaining Russian, both of them realizing their careful plan was falling apart. Elena! Marcus called out. This is insane. I'm trying to save you. From what? I shouted back. A man who actually cares about me? From a life of violence. From becoming like him. I looked at Alessandro, saw him reloading with practiced efficiency, saw the way he moved despite his injuries to keep himself between me and danger. Saw the man who'd chosen to protect me even when it cost him everything. Maybe I already am like him, I said, and put my last bullet through Marcus's shoulder. He went down screaming, and the final Russian hesitated, just for a second, but long enough for Alessandro to end it. Silence fell over the destroyed penthouse like a shroud. The morning sun streamed through the shattered windows, illuminating a scene from a war zone. Alessandro and I looked at each other across the wreckage of our old lives, both of us bloodied, both of us changed. It's over, he said. Is it? He gestured toward Marcus, who was clutching his shoulder and whimpering. He'll talk. The FBI will get their case. The Russians will back off rather than risk more attention. And us. Alessandro holstered his gun and walked toward me, stepping carefully over debris and bodies. When he reached me, he cupped my face in his hands. That's up to you, he said. You can walk away. New identity, new life, your inheritance to start over anywhere you want. And if I stay? Then you stay with me. All of me. The violence, the danger, the empire built on blood and fear. His thumbs traced my cheekbones. I won't lie to you about what that means. I thought about the girl who'd walked down the aisle in white lace, dreaming of safety and normalcy. She felt like a stranger now. I already gave you my answer, I said. Are you sure? Really sure? Instead of answering with words, I kissed him. It tasted like blood and gunpowder and promises that couldn't be broken. When we broke apart, sirens were wailing in the distance. Police, ambulances, the mundane world rushing in to clean up our extraordinary mess. Mrs. Russo, Alessandro said against my lips. Mrs. Russo, I agreed. But even as we held each other in the ruins of the penthouse, even as we made promises about forever, neither of us saw Vincent reaching for the gun that had skittered under the overturned table. Neither of us saw Marcus struggling to his feet, fury and desperation driving him forward. The gunshots rang out simultaneously. Vincent's bullet meant for Alessandro, Marcus's for me. Both of them fired by men who'd rather see us dead than happy. The screen went dark as we fell, our fates unknown, Our love story interrupted by the very betrayals that had brought us together. But the real enemy was closer than they thought.